Hey there, and welcome to our channel. Here, we break down powerful books in a simple and engaging way so you can learn, grow, and take charge of your life. Today, we've got a story that has transformed the lives and mindsets of millions around the world. We're talking about none other than the best-selling book by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This book gives you deep insights into money, financial education, and the mindset you need to build real wealth. It compares the lives and beliefs of two father figures, one rich, the other poor, and shows how their decisions shaped their financial destinies. That's the core message of this book. In this video, we'll walk you through the 6 key lessons, core principles, and inspiring stories from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all explained in simple, clear language. If you're someone who wants to improve your financial life, this video could be the roadmap you've been looking for. You'll learn how to make money work for you, the difference between assets and liabilities, why financial education matters more than your school curriculum, and how rich people think differently to stay rich. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like and share it. And of course, hit that subscribe button. Because our mission is to give you knowledge that can truly change your life. Alright, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in. Let's continue this incredible journey and dive deeper into what Robert Kiyosaki's powerful book teaches us. So here's the story. Robert Kiyosaki, the author of this book, actually had 2 dads. One was highly educated, held a PhD, and believed strongly in traditional education. But despite all that, he struggled with money his entire life and died poor. That's why Robert calls him his poor dad. His second father wasn't highly educated, didn't have fancy degrees, but he was wealthy, financially smart, and successful in business. Robert refers to him as his rich dad. Now you might be wondering, how can one person have 2 dads at the same time? Well, here's the answer. Robert's poor dad was actually his real biological father, the one who always told him to study hard, get good grades, and land a secure job at a big company. On the other hand, his rich dad was actually the father of his best friend, Mike, a man who believed that real learning happens through life experiences and not just textbooks. He taught Robert that challenges teach us more than comfort ever will. School can help you get good grades, sure, but life teaches you lessons that no classroom ever can. Now, that's not to say formal education isn't important. It is. But if you rely only on school knowledge, you're missing the bigger picture. So let's get into it. What exactly should we do, and how do we begin? Let's start with Lesson 1. The rich don't work for money. Sounds strange, right? But to really understand that line, the rich don't work for money, let me tell you a little story that will make it crystal clear. So here's what happened. There was a man who owned a donkey, and whenever he wanted the donkey to do some work, he'd hang a carrot in front of its face, just out of reach. Now the donkey, tempted by that carrot, would keep moving forward, thinking, just a little more and I'll finally get it. He kept walking, pulling heavy loads, hoping that someday he'd catch that carrot. For the man, it was a clever trick. He got all the work done without much effort. But for the poor donkey, that carrot, it was just an illusion, a dream he could never touch. And that's exactly how many people live their lives. Just like that donkey, they keep grinding day after day, believing that someday they'll finally get rich. But in reality, money becomes nothing more than a dream they're endlessly chasing. And here's the truth. If you keep running after money, you'll never catch it. Instead of working for money, you need to learn how to make money work for you. When you're focused on becoming rich, Don't just work harder for a paycheck, because the moment you step onto that path, two powerful forces start to take control: fear and greed. First, fear kicks in. The fear of being broke, the fear of staying poor. That fear pushes you to work even harder, longer, more desperately. Then comes greed. You start fantasizing about all the beautiful things money could buy: the cars, the house, the lifestyle. That fear and greed lock you in a loop, a never-ending cycle that keeps you trapped. So what do? You work even more. You start working even harder just to earn more. And as your income goes up, your expenses rise right along with it. Rich Dad had a name for this endless cycle. He called it the rat race. And here's what happens. You hustle harder to make more money. You spend more. Then you chase even more money, and it never ends. It's a trap, a mental and financial trap driven by greed and fear. And most people who dream of becoming rich, they end up falling right into it. So instead of chasing money, you need to flip the game and make money chase you. If you've got a job, don't just go in thinking, well, I'll get my paycheck at the end of the month. 'Cause let's be honest, that paycheck barely covers all your bills. And when that becomes your routine month after month, you start to feel stuck. Eventually, out of frustration, you start looking for a different job, hoping it pays more. You work harder, longer hours. But guess what? You're still working for money. And that's exactly why you never get rich. It's time to face the truth. You are responsible for your own life, not your job, not your boss, not anyone else. So ask yourself, seriously, why are you working? Are you just working so you can feel a sense of security? So that no matter what, you'll always have a job that won't fire you? Or are you just working for a paycheck, thinking, one day, if I keep this up, I'll be rich? But is that really enough to satisfy you? If your answer is yes, then honestly, I feel sorry for you. Because if that's your mindset, the dream you have of becoming rich, it's never going to come true. You'll stay stuck in poverty, always surviving, never thriving. But if your answer is no, if you're ready for something more, then your first step is to eliminate fear from your mind. Because the fear of not making enough money and the greed to want more forces you to work blindly without thinking clearly. And it's this exact pattern that pushes people toward failure. Now let's be honest, all of us feel fear. All of us have desires. That's human nature. But you have to be stronger than those emotions. You can't let them take control and drive you to make reckless choices. It's better to pause and think before you act. Use your head, not just your heart. Every morning, ask yourself, am I really doing everything I can? Am I using my full potential? Stop thinking like the average person, the one who works only for a paycheck. Stop blaming your boss for underpaying you, or thinking, I deserve more, or I could earn more somewhere else. Here's the truth. You, and only you, are responsible for your life. If your boss won't give you a raise, don't waste your time blaming them. Take full ownership of your problems, because when you do, only you have the power to solve them. And that was the first lesson Rich Dad ever taught Robert. And a big part of that lesson was this. Rich Dad wanted to teach Robert a lesson, so he had him work at a small convenience store. Here's the twist. Robert didn't get paid a single dime. He just worked, day after day, without any paycheck. But over time, something interesting happened. Because there was no money involved, Robert wasn't focused on earning. He was focused on learning. He stayed alert, stayed curious, And that's when new ideas started to spark in his mind. He began asking himself, how can I get money to work for me? Then one day, he noticed something strange. The store clerk would tear the front cover off of old comic books. She'd keep one half and toss the other half into the trash. Later in the evening, a comic distributor would stop by. He'd collect those torn covers for credit, and in return, he'd drop off brand new comics. So Robert had an idea. He asked the distributor, "Can I take the old comics, the ones that are being thrown away?" The man agreed, but under one condition: you can't sell them. Robert agreed, but he wasn't planning to sell them. Instead, he started a comic book rental business. He set up shop in an empty garage. He rented those used comics out to his friends and neighborhood kids, 10 cents per comic, for 2 hours. That way, he wasn't technically suing them. And the kids were thrilled. They got to read lots of comics for cheap. Robert didn't even have to manage the garage himself. He hired Mike's sister to run the place and paid her $1 per week. By the end of just 1 week, Robert had made $9.50, completely passive income. That's when it hit him. Make money work for you, don't work for money. And that was the breakthrough. Now, let's move to lesson 2, why financial literacy is so important. Let me explain with a true story. Back in 1923, a powerful meeting took place at the Edgewater Beach Hotel in Chicago. Some of the world's wealthiest businessmen and top industry leaders gathered there. Among them were Charles Schwab, the head of a major steel company; Samuel Insull, president of the largest utility company at the time; and many other high-profile moguls. Now here's the shocking part. Fast forward 25 years later, and many of those same men were either broke, insane, or dead by suicide. How did that happen? These were people who knew how to make money, but they never learned the real skill: how to manage, protect, and grow their wealth. And that's the core of this lesson. You can make all the money in the world, but if you don't know how to hold on to it, it will slip right through your fingers. Once you understand how money actually works, you're no longer at the mercy of unexpected crises, the kind people usually call emergencies. When you plan wisely and learn financial discipline, you can avoid those out-of-nowhere disasters, or at least handle them with confidence. Think about lottery winners. They win millions overnight, live big for a few years, and then most of them, they end up right back where they started, or wire. Why? Because they lacked financial literacy. Most people keep asking, how do I become rich? Left double quotation mark. But those questions often lead to frustration, because the real answer is simple. If you want to build something like the Empire State Building, you don't just start stacking bricks. First, you dig a deep foundation. Then, you lay down a solid reinforced base. But if all you want is a small house, you can pour a 6-inch concrete slab and call it a day. Here's the problem. Most people try to build an Empire State Building on a 6-inch foundation, and then wonder why it all comes crashing down. That's exactly what happens with money, too. Robert's poor dad always told him to focus on education, get good grades, go to college, get a job. But his rich dad had a different mission. He wanted Robert to become financially literate. Most schools, they just teach you how to build a house, but not how to build a solid foundation. Yes, school has its place, but in the real world, it's not enough. And that brings us to lesson 3. Understand the difference between assets and liabilities. And always buy assets. Now that might sound simple, but it's actually the golden rule that can make you rich. Here's what happens. Most poor and middle-class people confuse liabilities for assets. They think they're buying wealth when they're actually buying debt. Rich people, They know exactly what an asset is, and they buy only that. Rich Dad believed in a principle called KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's exactly what he taught Robert and his friend Mike. A simple but powerful truth that helped them lay a rock-solid foundation. Sometimes, it's the simplest truths that carry the most power. So what exactly are assets and liabilities? Assets are things that put money in your pocket. Liabilities are things that take money out of your pocket. And Rich Dad always said, buy assets. Always. Now, if that's really so simple, why isn't everyone rich? Here's the truth. It's so simple, most people never even think about it. They assume they understand the difference between assets and liabilities, but in reality, they only know basic literacy, not financial literacy. Let me break it down. You need to think of your income statement like a profit and loss report. It's simple. Income is how much money comes in. Expenses are how much money goes out. Now your balance sheet tells a different story. It shows the balance between your assets and liabilities. Surprisingly, even many educated accountants don't really understand how the income statement and balance sheet connect. But if you do understand this link, you can change your entire financial future. Let me give you an example. Let's say you buy a house and you rent it out. The rent you collect each month, that's income, and it helps you pay off the loan you took to buy the house. Eventually, the house becomes yours, and it's still making you money every single month. That's an asset. It's working for you. Now take the opposite case. You buy a house, but you live in it. You're not collecting any rent. You're just paying mortgage, utilities, maintenance. That's a liability, because it's taking money out of your pocket. So if you really want to become rich, buy assets. But if you want to stay poor, keep piling up liabilities. Rich people have more money not because they earn more, but because they follow the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. They understand the basics, and they don't overcomplicate it. On the other hand, poor people often don't understand this principle clearly. That's why it's so important to say, don't just be literate, be financially literate. Knowing numbers isn't enough. What really matters is learning how to write your own financial story. In most families, the hardest working person tends to earn the most money. But what's the point of all that hard work if all that money just disappears into liabilities? Let's take a look at how the middle class typically spends their money. Most middle-class people live paycheck to paycheck, and here's why they stay stuck. They keep spending on liabilities. Mortgage, rent, car loans, house loans, credit card bills, school fees, electric bills, groceries, and the list just keeps going. By the time their paycheck hits their bank account, it's already gone. This is why so many middle-class families struggle. They might earn decently, but their spending habits hold them back from ever building real wealth. And now, let's look at the poor. Sure, they don't always have big liabilities like home loans or car payments, but they also don't have any assets. They earn money, they get their paycheck, but that money disappears just as quickly into daily living expenses. Let's say a poor man earns $2,000 a month. $600 goes to rent, $200 for commuting, $400 in taxes, $500 on food and clothing. Now what's left? Almost nothing. And in some cases, they even have to borrow money just to make it through the month. That's how people fall deeper into poverty, by borrowing just to survive. Now contrast that with the rich. Rich people buy assets, and those assets generate even more income over time. Their money grows from 2 to 4, 4 to 8, and so on. Most wealthy people think strategically. They use loans not to buy a property. Instead of living in it, they rent it out, and the rent covers the loan payment. For example, the loan installment might be $200, but they charge $400 in monthly rent. They pay $200 to the bank and keep the other $200 as profit, money made without lifting a finger. That's what it means to make money work for you. So in the end, the difference between rich dad and poor dad comes down to one thing: mindset. It's not about how much you earn, it's about how you spend what you earn. That's the real game changer. Back in 1967, if you asked a kid, left double quotation mark, most would say, greater than double quotation mark. Why? Because everyone believed that good grades meant a good job, and a good job meant good money. And sure, many of those kids did grow up to become doctors. But here's the catch. A lot of them still struggle financially because they thought earning more money would automatically solve all their problems. But in today's world, that belief doesn't hold up. Now, if you ask kids what they want to be, they'll say, a famous athlete, a CEO, a movie star, or a rock star, because they've started to realize something important. That's because they've realized just getting good grades isn't enough anymore to build a successful career. Today, financial nightmares are way too common. Take a newly married couple, for example. They're excited because now, with both of them working, their income has doubled. Living in a small apartment, they start dreaming of a bigger home. So, naturally, they begin to save money, because to them, that's step one to becoming rich. Their focus shifts entirely to building their careers. And sure enough, their income goes up, but so do their expenses. Now, here's the real trap. When you start making more money without becoming financially literate, you also start spending more. It becomes a cycle. The couple makes enough now to buy a big house, and they actually believe this means they're becoming wealthy. But here's the truth. That big house just came with big liabilities. Their cash flow now takes a hit from property taxes, higher mortgage payments, maintenance costs, and of course, with a new house, they now want a new car, new furniture, new everything. Their liabilities keep growing and growing, and just like that, as income goes up, so do the expenses. Until one day, reality hits hard. But by then, they're stuck in the rat race. And it's at that point people come running to Robert, the author of this book, and ask him the same old question. How do I become rich? That's the question people ask. But here's the thing. That question itself is the root of the problem. Because everyone believes that money is the solution to everything. And believing that is their first big mistake. The real issue isn't how much money you make. It's about how well you handle what you already have. There's an old saying that fits perfectly here. Greater than if you find yourself a deep hole, stop digging. Most people are terrified of public speaking. Psychiatrists say it's because we fear rejection. We're scared to be different, scared of what people might think, scared they'll laugh at us. That's why so many people avoid public speaking. They'd rather just blend in with the crowd. And people like that, they take comfort in being average. We've all heard the same advice over and over again. Greater than your home is your greatest asset. Take a loan. It's okay. You just got promoted. Your salary's higher now. You deserve a new house. So what do? We follow the crowd. We assume if everyone's doing it, it must be the right thing to do. But no. That's exactly where most people go wrong. Rich Dad once said that the Japanese understood the sword, which symbolizes the power of your arms. 2. Jewels, which symbolizes the power of money. 3. The mirror, which symbolizes the power within yourself. And that mirror That's our greatest strength. When you can look yourself in the eye and ask, am I doing what's right for me? Or am I just following the crowd? The answer you find, that's where your real power lies. The poor and middle class, they let money control them. That's why they never become wealthy. When Robert and Mike were just 16, they would attend every business meeting their rich dad held, whether it was with his accountants, managers, investors, or employees. And what they saw was incredible. He was a man, a rich dad, who had dropped out of school at just 13 years old, but now he ran entire meetings. He gave instructions to highly educated professionals, offered business strategies, and made decisions like a true leader. He wasn't part of the crowd. He was someone who took risks, someone who didn't care what people thought of him. He dared to be different. Being in those meetings had a deep impact on Robert and his friend. They slowly lost interest in school, not because they were lazy, but because they began to realize something. School doesn't always bring out your talent. Sometimes it suppresses it. When their teachers give them assignments, they had to do everything by the book, follow every rule. That's when they realized the traditional education system tries to fit everyone into one mold. It kills creativity. It turns students into robots, just more pieces in society's machine. And they strongly disagreed with the idea that good grades equals success, because they knew that's not always true. One day, Robert Ward got into a heated argument with his poor dad. His father strongly believed that his home was the best investment he ever made. But in reality, he was stuck in a rat race. His income and expenses were always neck and neck. He didn't even have a moment to breathe. Robert was just trying to explain to him that, in his case, his house wasn't an asset, it was a liability. He was constantly putting money into the house, but getting nothing back in return. But his poor dad just couldn't see it. And that right there was the difference between his rich dad and poor dad. The debate kept going. Robert tried to explain that most people spend their entire lives paying off debt. They buy a house and then spend 30 years paying it off. Then what? They go for an even bigger house and renew their loan again. But here's the problem. There's no guarantee the house will actually increase in value. Some people even borrow more money than the house is worth, and now they're buried in debt. The worst part, they have no money left to invest elsewhere. Everything goes into that one house. They never get a chance to learn about investing. They never get the experience, and in the process, they miss out on building real assets. If only people would shift their focus toward assets instead of liabilities, their future could look so much brighter. Take this, for example. Robert's wife's parents once moved into a much bigger house. They believed that buying a newer, larger home was a smart decision. Just like many others, they saw a house as an asset. But they were shocked when they learned that the property tax on that house was $1,000. That was a huge expense for them, especially since they were already retired. Paying that much in taxes was way beyond their retirement budget. Now, don't get us wrong. We're not saying you should never buy a new house. We're just saying, instead of spending all that money on a bigger house, what if you invested it into a real asset? An asset that would earn for you, that would generate income every single month. Soon enough, you'd have more than enough money to buy the house you really want, without ever taking a loan. So now the real question is, why do the rich keep getting richer while the middle class stays stuck? It all comes down to one simple truth. The rich buy assets that keep multiplying their income. With that income, they easily cover all their expenses. But the middle class, they wait for their paycheck every month, and when it arrives, it disappears just as fast, wiped out by bills and monthly expenses. So how can they invest anything? And when their salary goes up, so does the tax bracket. Expenses increase, and boom, the rat race continues. The point is, we live in a debt-driven society, and the root of it all, it's this mistaken belief that your house is your greatest asset, when in reality, it's the very thing keeping you buried in debt. This is how most people think today. The moment their salary goes up, they assume it's time to buy a bigger house, because to them, that feels like the smart way to use money. But if they had invested that money the right way instead, their entire life could have changed forever. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. Why? Because all their time is spent grinding away at work. They treat their job like a safety zone and never even think beyond it. And with the heavy burden of debt, they don't feel like they can ever take the risk of leaving that job. Now ask yourself, honestly, if you suddenly quit your job today, how long could you survive? If you're not financially literate, if you've spent your entire life relying only on a salary and collecting liabilities instead of assets, then yes, your life is going to be financially challenging. Net worth alone won't save you. Net worth just tells you how much stuff you own, even if that includes an old car gathering dust in your garage. It doesn't mean you're rich. What really matters is wealth. Wealth means how much money your money is making for you. Let's say you own an asset that earns you $3,000 a month, but your monthly expenses are $6,000. That means you can only afford to live half the month off your assets. Not enough. So what's the solution? Simple. Increase your income from assets. When your assets start covering all your monthly expenses, you won't become rich overnight, but you'll definitely start becoming wealthy. And if you ever leave your job suddenly, you'll still be safe, because your assets are paying your bills. You only become truly wealthy when your expenses are lower than the income your assets generate. And with that, we move on to lesson number 4. Mind your own business. This reminds me of a legendary moment. Back in 1947, Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, gave a powerful speech to an MBA class. It was iconic. After Ray Kroc delivered his inspiring speech, the MBA students asked if they could spend a little more time with him. So he joined them for a beer. While chatting, Ray suddenly asked them a question. "Do you guys know what business I'm in?" Everyone laughed. Of course they knew. He sold hamburgers, right? But Ray smiled and shook his head. He said, "No, my real business is real estate." He explained that every McDonald's location is chosen very carefully, and the land where each franchise operates is owned by the company. That means the franchise owner not only buys into the business, but also buys the land. So in reality, McDonald's is a real estate business disguised as a fast food chain. That lesson stuck with Robert. It was something his rich dad had been teaching him all along. Most people, his rich dad said, work for everyone else but themselves. They pay taxes and work for the government. They work for their boss at a company. They pay interest to the bank and work for the bank too. All of this happens because our education system trains us to become employees, not employers. We're told to study hard, get good grades, and become part of the system. If you studied science, you're expected to become a doctor. If you studied math, you'll become an engineer. Basically, you become what you study. But here's the problem. That system doesn't really help students succeed, because it never teaches them the difference between having a job and running a business. So when someone asks you, "What's your business?" you shouldn't say, "I'm a doctor" or "I'm a banker." That's your profession, not your business. Your real business is what you're building behind that profession. Build your own business, not just a job. Don't spend your entire life working for others, making them rich, and then regret it later. Instead, work to create a life that brings you happiness and freedom. A lot of people realize way too late that their home loan is sucking the life out of them. They thought their house was an asset, but in reality, it never really was. Same thing with cars. They buy a car and suddenly, all the expenses that come with it, gas, maintenance, insurance, become liabilities. That's when the real struggle begins. That's exactly why we keep putting so much emphasis on building your assets column, not just your income column. Because true financial freedom comes from assets. Now, let me be clear. I'm not telling you to go out and lease a car. Because in my eyes, a car is not an asset. As soon as you drive it off the lot, it loses about 25% of its value instantly. So, what kind of assets should you invest in? Let's break it down. 1. A business that doesn't require your presence. Something that runs without you. If you have to be there every day, it's not a business, it's just another job. 2. Real estate. Properties that appreciate in value or generate rental income. 3. Stocks and bonds. Investments that grow over time and pay you returns. And here's a simple tip. Invest in things you actually like. If you're personally interested in something, you'll naturally pay more attention to it. You'll want to learn, understand, and manage it better. For Robert, his passion was real estate and stocks, so that's where he focused. Robert especially liked investing in small countries. On his rich dad's advice, he never quit his job, but at the same time, he kept growing and strengthening his assets column. The key takeaway: don't let a single dollar you earn go to waste. Treat your money like a servant, something that should work for you, not the other way around. Want to buy luxury stuff? Sure, go for it. But don't go for it. That's where the mindset district comes from. Dance. We're here. Why is it? Middle-class folks, the moment they get paid, they rush out to spend it on luxuries. Rich people, they buy luxuries last, only after their assets are already generating steady income. And now that you've understood this much, it's time for the next powerful lesson. Lesson 5. Rich people invent money. Let's take a look at history. When Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, he didn't stop there. He immediately patented it. But as his business grew, things became too overwhelming to manage alone. So, he went to Western Union and offered to sell his patent along with his small company for just $100,000. But Western Union's president turned him down. He thought the price was too high. And that one decision, it opened the door for one of the biggest companies in history, AT&T, to be born. Now back to Robert. Since 1984, he's been teaching professionally. And after working with thousands of people, there's one truth he's realized. Everyone has potential. Not just a few people. Every single person has the power inside them to become truly great. But even after having all that potential, the thing that holds us back the most is self-doubt. Once we leave school, we realize that grades alone aren't enough to get ahead in life. It's not just the smartest people who succeed. It's the ones who are bold enough to take action. Yes, financial genius requires knowledge, but it also takes guts and courage. Most people, they're too scared to take any risk when it comes to money. But if you really want to get rich, you have to take risks. Because in the coming years, we might see a new Bill Gates rise, or a future Alexander Graham Bell, while others might end up broke and bankrupt. So ask yourself, who do you want to be? If you grow your financial IQ, you can achieve incredible things. But if you don't, the future might feel even more uncertain and terrifying. Because every time the old way fades, a new system takes its place. Which means, right now, This moment is actually the best time to take control of your future. The problem? People today are struggling financially because their mindset is still stuck in the past. And instead of owning their mistakes, they blame their boss or new technology. But the truth is, what once used to be an asset might now have become a liability. So the only solution is to stay updated. To help with that, Robert even designed a board game called Cash Flow. This game teaches people how money really works, what the path to wealth looks like, and how to finally escape the rat race. Through this simple game, he tries to teach the very lessons that schools never do. One day, a woman came in to play the game. During the game, she won a boat card, which meant she had just won a boat. She was super excited, but the moment she found out she had to pay a huge tax on that boat, her excitement completely vanished. What she thought was an asset now turned out to be a liability. She realized that this boat could end up sinking her financially. She didn't understand the idea at all and actually asked for a refund. She got her money back and left. But later, she called and said, "Now I think I'm starting to get it. The game is actually a lot like real life." She finally began to connect the dots and understand how money really works. And honestly, her frustration was understandable. Because we all do the same thing. Whenever something doesn't make sense to us, we react with anger, and then we start blaming that thing for all our life's problems. But if we just calm down and try to understand it, we might actually start learning. And that's how you win the game of life. A lot of people win big money in the cash flow game, but then they don't know what to do with it. They get overwhelmed. Why? Because of their old mindset. It keeps them stuck and scared of change. And eventually, they lose all the money they just won. Some even say, "I lost because I didn't get the right cards." That's how so many people live in real life, just waiting for the right opportunity to show up. And even when it does, some people still miss it. But when that moment comes, they miss out because they say, "I don't have the money." And then there are some people who do have the money and the opportunity, yet they still can't make it work. Why? Because they simply don't recognize it as an opportunity. Financial intelligence means, how creative can you get with money? Ask yourself this: what would you do if you had the opportunity, but no money? And what would you do if you had the money, but no opportunity? The answers lie in your financial IQ. Most people think there's only one solution: work harder, earn more money. But what you really need to learn is how to create your own opportunities instead of just sitting around waiting for one. The biggest secret of the rich? They know money isn't the real thing. The real thing is understanding money. It's knowing how to use it to create what you actually want. Your mind is your greatest asset. That's what can make you super rich or super poor. It all depends on how you use it. If you want to keep up with successful people, you have to learn how to desire wealth, and most importantly, how to invest in your biggest asset, your own mind. You have to become financially intelligent. Let's break this down with an example. Back in the 1990s, Arizona and Phoenix were going through a tough time financially. People were being told to save $100 a month to prepare for a rainy day. Sure, saving in hard times is smart, but what's the point of money if you're just stacking it up with no purpose? It's better to take a portion of that money and put it into something that will grow over time. Now, let's talk about what happened in Arizona and Phoenix. Because of the financial struggle, people started selling their properties for dirt cheap prices. And for savvy investors, this was a golden opportunity. While others were panicking, investors were buying. Robert did the same. He bought a house that was originally worth $75,000 for just $20,000. Then he placed an ad through his attorney's office. Greater than home worth $75,000. Now available for only $60,000. Buyers rushed in. His phone didn't stop ringing. That money he earned, it came from an asset, the promissory note he took from the buyer. And guess what? It only took him 5 hours to earn that money. The $40,000 he created, it came straight out of his asset column, not from a paycheck. And, best of all, it was tax-free. By spotting and acting on the right opportunity, Robert was able to instantly generate income and add it directly to his income column. Fast forward a few years, that little business he started, it was generating so much income that it was covering everything. His company car, gas insurance, client dinners, trips, and all sorts of expenses. By the time the government came around to tax anything, most of those expenses had already been written off as pre-tax deductions. And that house he sold for $60,000, a few years later, it was worth over $95,000. Sure, more deals came along after that, but the margins were smaller, and those deals required Robert to invest more time and more valuable assets. So, he moved on. He started looking for newer, better opportunities. Now, here's a question for you. Greater than, is working hard actually worth it? Work your butt off, pay 15% in taxes, and save whatever's left? Then your savings might give you 5% interest. And you'll pay tax on that too? And you'll pay tax on that too? Sounds exhausting, right? Wouldn't it make more sense to invest your money and time into your most powerful asset, your own mind? Become financially intelligent. This world never stays the same. What's true today may not work tomorrow. Sometimes there's a recession, other times a boom. Tech is always evolving. Right now, the market's up. Tomorrow, the market could crash. Especially the stock market. It changes every single day. But does that really matter? Not if you're financially intelligent. Because when you are, you're ready for anything. Life's going to throw you all kinds of opportunities. And if you're smart about money, you'll know exactly how to grab them. The key is to spot them and act fast. Now, generally, there are two types of investors. Type 1, they buy packaged investments, stuff like mutual funds, index funds, or pre-bundled real estate deals. It's simple, no stress, no mess. But then, there's type 2, the pros. These investors don't wait for opportunities. They create their own. And more often than not, they earn way more than what they put in. So, if you want to be like them, you need to master 3 powerful skills. Skill number 1, find opportunities others can't see. Train your mind to notice things other people completely overlook. Your brain should spot value before the world even recognizes it. Skill number 2, learn how to raise money. When the middle class needs cash, they run straight to the bank. But pros? They raise capital. They know how to grow money without being stuck in the loan line. They don't always need banks. Skill number 3, organize smart people. Intelligent investors surround themselves with people smarter than they are, and they build teams that win. That's why before you invest, choose your investment advisor wisely. Look, I know all of this might feel like a lot, but the rewards, totally worth it. Life is full of risks, but if you can learn how to manage them, that's how you become wealthy. Now let's move on to the 6th lesson. Work to learn, not just for money. So here's the story. Once, a journalist interviewed Robert. Now, Robert had read her work before, And honestly, he was really impressed by her writing style. Once the interview wrapped up, she told Robert, "I want to be a famous author someday, just like you." Robert asked her, "What's stopping you?" She replied, "My job's just not going anywhere." Robert thought for a second, then gave her a simple piece of advice. "You should take a sales course." The journalist said, "Well, actually, my friend already offered me one, but it just feels beneath me." What she didn't know was, Robert himself had once gone through sales training. Here's the point. Even if you have talent, that alone isn't enough to make money. You might be the best at what you do, but if you don't know how to sell it, that talent won't get you anywhere. Until you learn how to present yourself and offer your skill in a way that people actually want, your talent's just sitting there, unused. There's nothing wrong with learning how to sell. Being in sales? That's nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, it's one of the most valuable skills you can have. Here's one of the biggest differences between Robert's rich dad and poor dad. Poor dad always worried about job security. To him, having a safe and stable job was everything. But rich dad? He focused only on one thing: learning. He believed that if you want to get rich, you need to learn a lot. Now let's look at this from another angle. In school, we're taught to specialize. We get rewarded for becoming an expert in one narrow field. For example, when a doctor gets a master's degree, they don't stop there. They go on to specialize in something even more specific, like pediatrics or another niche field. They have to study that one tiny subject intensely, and that's how they earn their title. But if you want to understand the bigger picture, you can't just rely on one skill. You gain that kind of knowledge only by working for different companies, trying out new roles, and understanding how the world actually works. That's how you build real experience. And that's exactly why Rich Dad would take young Robert and Mike along with him whenever he had meetings with doctors, accountants, lawyers, or any other professionals. He wanted them to see how the real world worked firsthand. Now, when Robert left his high-paying job to join the Marine Corps, his poor but highly educated father just couldn't understand. He was truly disappointed. To him, it made no sense that Robert would walk away from such a secure job. But Robert did his best to explain why this decision was so important. But his God just couldn't accept it. Robert told him,
"I want to learn how to fly under an open sky. I want to know how to lead a team of workers. I want to understand what it really takes to run a company from the ground up."
He wasn't chasing money, he was chasing real knowledge. After returning from Vietnam, Robert quit his job and joined Xerox Corporation, not because it was a great job, but because he had a problem to fix. He was extremely shy. The idea of selling anything to anyone literally made him sweat. So, to overcome this fear, he enrolled in Xerox's sales training program. And once he built up enough confidence, Robert launched his own company and shipped out his first order. Now, if that order had failed, he would have gone bankrupt. But he took the risk anyway and remembered his rich dad advice: before you turn 30, it's okay to go broke. You still got time to bounce back. See, here's the truth.
Most companies pay their workers just enough to keep them from quitting. And most workers work just hard enough so they don't get fired. They care only about the paycheck and the benefits. That mindset works for a few years, but in the long run, it traps you. So why not learn everything you can right now before you lock yourself into a specific profession? Because once you choose that safe career, you could end up stuck there for life.
And with that, this summary comes to a close.
Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, stay curious,
and keep building that financial intelligence.